G'day mates, it's the Doctor here, and now is the time to talk about my Drytron deck, because I finally got Mu Beta Fafnir, the Xyz monster, in the mail, and, well, also happened to get some copies of Drytron Nova, but this is going to be the budget variant of Drytrons, at least for the most part. Because with Drytrons you can pretty much build an entire deck just from biting biting, buying the Genesis Impact set, with the exception of a few ultra rares that you have to be lucky to get. Now, one thing I do want to talk about before I get into the deck profile is regarding Diviner of the Herald. And, well, if you watched my last opening, I happened to pull it from the pack, but I traded it for the copies of Drytron Nova because that's more of a necessity. And I do know Diviner of the Herald is used to activate Herald of the Arclight to send it from the extra deck to the graveyard, and you get to search for a ritual monster, ritual spell, but there's already a ton of search power in the Drytron deck already. So, yes, I do know there are other variants, like the Megalith version, and this is mostly counter fairies. But yeah, people are really experimenting with Drytrons, and I mean, who can blame them? Like, the artworks are fantastic. They have a very unique mechanic to how the deck operates. But let's just get into it and talk about the cards themselves. So first we have Drytron Alpha Fubin. So the gimmick to all the Drytrons is they tribute either another Drytron monster or a ritual monster, then you can special summon them from the hand, and then their effects will activate. Now, I've heard the rulings for that is that if you want to negate them, they have to be in the hand, not on the field, because like once I hit the field, then their effects are already activated because it was in the hand or something. It's kind of weird because you can stop that with Mermail Abystius, at least in dueling, so I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Rulings, they've never been the most clear, you know, especially when you don't have a judge around like you're dueling at home. But Alpha Vubin is used to search for ritual monsters, and there's plenty of ritual monsters in this deck, so that's definitely worth taking into consideration. And yeah, well, you'll see what I mean later on. So now we have Delta Altes. This card lets you draw a card. Like, they all have the same stats, except the ritual monster for the Drytrons. Oh, there's two of them. But anyway, Delta Altes lets you draw a card. Gamma Eltonen is the monster reborn for the deck, where you can summon it in attack mode, because otherwise with your Drytron monsters, they have to be in defense mode, and they have 0 defense. So 3 copies of Gamma Eltonen, and now we have the other card that's kind of awkward for the deck. This is Drytron Zeta Aldebar, and this lets you add a ritual spell, but the problem with that is there's only, well, at least I run 2 copies of Drytron Medionis, or Medionis Drytron, because you definitely want to get the ritual monsters, like which ritual monster that you may need in the specific situation that you're in, but of course, well, there are just other cards to search for Medionis Drytron, but being another Drytron card of itself means you have other ways of tributing, like another sacrifice for, say, like Alpha Vubin or the other Drytrons. So, in my opinion, Zeta Aldebar is the weakest, but kind of needed as well. Now we have some non-Drytron cards, and this is Manju of the 10,000 Hands. Now, as you can see, this is an older printing, this is a newer printing, and this card lets you add a ritual monster or a ritual spell. So right there's the awkwardness, how it's just one of the many cards that replaces Zeta Aldebar, but it's still useful. And, you know, you can save your normal summons with that, because the restrictions with Drytrons is that you cannot special summon other monsters except monsters that cannot be special summoned, like rituals or links. Now we have Eva. This card is currently $5, and this is from the structure deck. I just call it the Counter Fairy. It has a specific name, a Light of I don't think it's Light of Destruction. But this is an absolute necessity for Drytrons, because with this card, when it's sent to the graveyard, you can banish 2 other Light Fairies from the field or graveyard, then add the same number of level 2 or lower fairies with different names from the deck to your hand. So, I don't know if any of you guys may have the Counter Fairy structure deck around your places, because it's still around where I live, funny enough. So maybe recommend 3. So when it says other, like you can banish 2 other light fairies. That's counting like other copies, not Eva itself. So Eva cannot banish itself, but you can banish like another copy of Eva and get some more replacements. So with a level 2 or lower fairies, you can add, well, Diviner of a Herald, so I guess it's searchable off Eva, but there's the hand traps, Herald of Green Light and Herald of Orange Light. So Green Light can negate spell cards as long as you send another fairy to your graveyard, like Eva, and Orange Light can negate monster effects. But, as you're about to see, maybe I'll just talk about it now. So, we'll save the Drytron ritual for later. So, Herald of Ultimateness is the ultimate negator, because it's not once per turn, and you can just send as many fairies in your hand to the graveyard to keep negating your monsters, your opponent's monsters, spells, and traps. And so, when Eva hits the graveyard by cost of Herald of Ultimateness to negate your monster's cards, I said again, opponent's cards, then with Eva, you just banish another fairy that you have in your graveyard, and you just get more ammunition to power up Herald of Ultimateness. But now we'll talk about Drytron Meteorus Draconid, so I'm only using 1 copy, because like, as scary as it looks at face value, it can still be kaiju'd, it can still be destroyed by card effects, just not targeted. And yes, it can attack your opponent's monster multiple times. It's fine. It is, well, really powerful being at 4,000 attack. And the ritual spell, as we know, requires you to sacrifice monsters. It requires monsters' attack points instead of levels. So that's another unique thing about Drytrons, is that they rely on attack points for ritual summoning. Now we have a deck that is seriously underwhelming, which is Cyber Angels, and I wish there were just more Cyber Angel cards. There's plenty of rituals, but we need more for the main deck. Like, maybe retrained versions of Blade Skater or Etoil Cyber, like other Cyber Angels based on ballerina performances. Like Giselle was a show that was being advertised recently. So Cyber Angel Giselle, that could be a thing. And with the Cyber Angels, as we know, Ben 10 got hit, but Editon lets you add Machine Angel Ritual, because Machine Angel Ritual can protect your fairy rituals from the graveyard, so that's something you can go with. So yeah, the Counter Fairy, Megalith, and Cyber Angel variants. But it's a little tricky with only 1 copy of Ben 10 allowed. But you know, you can just sacrifice your Cyber Angel rituals from the hand to special summon your Drytrons from the hand or graveyard. Now, why Editon was so good is because it's not a once per turn searcher, but you can add a light fairy from the deck to your hand. Like Eva, or Manju of a 10,000, or even Herald of Ultimateness. All of them are light fairies. But then we have Cyber Angel Natasha, so with this card, you can banish another Cyber Angel from your graveyard to special summon this card and take control of an opponent's monster, so it's a stealer. It's a pretty scary card, but I think with the rulings for this card is that you cannot bring it back from the graveyard by its own effect unless it was ritual summoned first. I think that's ridiculous. It's kind of like with Fulfillment of the Contract, that which is that spell card that can special summon a ritual from the graveyard, except like the ritual monster has to be ritual summoned first, and yeah, what do you guys think of that? I've heard that's a ruling, so it's not like we should argue, but that's just how it is. Now, here are 2 copies of Meteorus Drytron. I keep calling it Drytron Meteorus. In fact, let's just check on the ritual guy, like Drytron Meteorus, and this is Meteorus Drytron. So, what does that even mean? Maybe you should look up what Drytrons are based on, like these Galaxy Dragon machines. Like, great artwork. By far the best archetype from Genesis Impact. What were the other 2? I don't even remember. Now we have Drytron Fafnir, the field spell. And this is just a weird field spell. When it's activated, you get to add a Drytron spell trap. In this case, there's only 2 different Drytron spells. I don't have any Drytron traps in this deck. But, you know, it can stuff your opponent around by reducing their monsters' levels, as well as preventing your ritual summonings from being negated. So, just one of the strangest field spells in the game, in my opinion. Now we have Cyber Emergency, just one of the many searchers. Then we have this card, Where Art Thou? So, this is another searcher because, well, you can search for any level 1 monster in your deck, because all the Drytrons, again, except with the ritual monster, they're all level 1, so if you have a level 1 monster, you just activate this, then go for another Drytron monster. Or you can add, say, a copy of Eva, because look at that, Eva is level 1. So, there's that, and you can also use Effect Veiler with this card, so you can add a hand trap, or just use Effect Veiler to normal summon it, then go for Drytron Mu Beta Fafnir, the Xyz. The only problem with Effect Veiler is that Effect Veiler is a spellcaster, not a fairy, so it loses some synergy with the deck. Also, if a monster wasn't normal summoned that was added by this effect, then you take 2,000 damage, so it's a bit of a hefty cost. But now we have Drytron Nova, so this card is currently $60. I don't know why, because you have so much search power, but you still kind of need this to just special summon from the field instead of adding it to your hand, because then it requires you to make another sacrifice. With Drytron Nova, you just summon it to a field, and you don't need to sacrifice another Drytron monster or a ritual monster. But, yeah, with the release of King's Call, we're going to have to wait until Brothers of Legend for the next reprint set, not counting, the Megatins. So that's a problem. And Eva's only been printed in the Counter Fairy structure deck, so this also needs to be reprinted. Because, well, I mean, Drytrons are really popular. Like, people want to play them. People want to get all the different supports, and yeah, it's a crazy deck right now. But let's go to the extra deck. So now we have the Xyz monster, Drytron Mu Beta Fafnir. Not to be confused with the field spell that's just called Drytron Fafnir. This is Mu Beta Fafnir. What does that mean? I don't know. But this card does a lot of crazy things, like it's a foolish burial from the deck. You can use the materials for your ritual summon, so you summon your Drytrons first, or maybe level 1 Eva, then you just overlay them to go into Mu Beta Fafnir, then you ritual summon afterwards. And it can also negate opponent spells and traps. It doesn't negate monster effects, weird enough. But you do have to have your Drytron Ritual monster, which is Meteorus Draconids. Now we have Herald of Mirage Light. So this monster requires 2 monsters of the same type, an attribute, and it's also another negator, but when it's destroyed, you get to add 2 ritual monsters or ritual spells with different names from the graveyard to your hand. So 600 attack, that's not really good. But if you just want to summon it to crash into your opponent, then bring back your ritual requirements, then yep, very good card. Then it got the nightmare monsters, because, well, I mean, they're nightmares. They're generic, they're just good in every deck. Like, what deck isn't good with nightmares? Seriously. And then there is Borlo Dragon, because, well, yes, this is the alternate artwork, but the card itself was printed in the Rocket structure deck. So it's printed as a common, but I really love the alternate artworks of the different Boral monsters. I think some people don't really appreciate the alternate art for Boral's Sword Dragon. I think it's much better. And Borlode is just crazy looking. Almost like its arms and wings aren't properly attached. But yeah, that pose is nuts. Crazy looking cards. And then there's the Access Code Talker, because I'm not too happy how this card is generic. It is completely generic. Just 2+ effect monsters? Why couldn't it be Cybers? Because it's almost falling into the same trappings as Firewall Dragon. Firewall Dragon was just too generic. But yes, this is going to be printed in the Megatin, so it's going to be a lot cheaper. How much? Who knows? They're probably going to short print it, of course. And they'll probably make it prismatic, so it will still have more value. And yes, hopefully we get Decode Talker Heat Saw by then. What's the next booster pack set? Dawn of Majesty, I think it is. I don't know when that comes out, but what do you guys think of my Drytron deck? Do you think of any improvements needed? And I should probably mention as well, this is pretty late in the evening that I'm recording, so I'm a bit out of it right now, but yeah, there's a Drytron deck. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and I'm still going to try and talk to my friend Sam about his Subterra deck profile. We'll see if I can get that done, and I would love to show you more deck profiles. So given my Paleozoic deck, well, wasn't mine in the first place, but I gave it back to Gryken, so that's why it's not here. And maybe I should go over my Mermail deck again, because I have gotten the Atlantean cards. I do have 3 copies of Dragoons, before anyone says. But there's the deck profile of my Drytron deck, and if you can think of any improvements, then feel free to share. And until next time, take care, mates.